Hi,
It's
everyone.
okay.
This is Toxic Tangents. You're back with Jenna, our CEO and founder, Joe, our CSO, Chief Scientific Officer, Chris, Head of People, Jiaxing, our producer and editor, Grace, and Tina, fellow members of Million Marker. Today, we're going to talk about what inspired Jenna and Joe to start the company, the hurdles that they faced along the way, especially as women and first-timers in this industry, and future obstacles that we are facing as we continue to grow Million Marker. So Jenna, how did you come up with the idea to start Million Marker and why now?
I started Million Marker because I actually ran into a couple reasons. I ran into a wall during my research that we have no personalized tools to allow people to measure their environmental exposures. This day and age, you can order a genetic test very easily online, figure out what your genetic makeup, but there's nothing you can do about it. Yet environmental exposures, which contribute so much to your disease risk, there's nothing we can do about it. The second wall I ran into is that we don't have any data to really study these chemicals. If you talk about getting a grant from the National Institute of Health, even if you get a $5 million grant, the amount of subjects you can recruit for your study many times is about 400 people. And if you think about our overall population, when you have a 400 people sample size for your study, that's not very generalizable. And in order to study these chemicals, we really need the big data. We need the sample size to actually study these chemicals especially when it comes to very low dose exposure over time. Thinking about how much chemical exposure you have day in and day out, they're very small amount, but it's day in and day out, so they accumulate. The third reason I started the company was also because of my own fertility struggles, that when I go to a doctor trying to order such tests, knowing what I know, that these chemicals could potentially lead to fertility issues, but there was no such test available. I felt at the time, even if I just have a peace of mind, by getting these tests, I think it'll be useful for other people. So that kind of prompted me to start the company.
Yeah, I think it's really the time to do it. Like people are more interested and knowledgeable about this topic. Like when I started studying this, no one had heard of BPA. No one knew what BPA was. And now pretty much everyone, and this was, I don't know, 15 years ago, now pretty much everyone knows what it is, knows it's a problem. The manufacturers put BPA free all over everything, even though that doesn't mean a whole lot. But I think people really want this service and they want to know what they're being exposed to. And I think now is the time to give that to people.
If you look at Google Trend, searching for chemical-free product or chemical-free or toxic-free, you can already see that in the last 10 years, this trend is trending up, that people actually want this. We also have also been accumulating, at least 2 decades of studies showing the linkages between these chemicals and people's health impact. Again.
Yeah, there's so much research. There's thousands and thousands of studies showing BPA is a problem, and not only BPA, but the chemicals associated with BPA and other chemicals. I mean, it just kind of really exploded in the past 10 years, I would say. Another interesting thing is I published a research or a review paper in 2013 on human effects of BPA. And when I first started putting them together, there weren't a lot of papers. I think I did find about 100 papers, which is a lot, but not a ton in the grand scheme of things. But now, even just how many years later, 7 years later, there's so much research. And it's kind of hard too, because we know it's a problem. There's a lot of research, but we need some action. And I think this company provides action for people.
Also, the technology behind how we assess these chemicals, which is using liquid chromatography, mass spectrometry, the technology have advanced so much in the last 10 years as well. So, if you think about genetic testing, when genetic testing first started, whole genome sequencing would cost you tens of thousands of dollars. And now it probably costs less than $1,000 to have your whole genome sequenced. Or, you can get a 23andMe test for $99. And we see environmental exposure assessment is kind of the similar way. 10 years ago, it cost so much money to do a test like this. I think EWG, actually Environmental Working Group, the pioneer in this work, about 10, 15 years ago, they ran a body burden test on famous individuals. And I think they probably spend more than like $5,000, $6,000 per individual to get all the testing done. And today we can get a test done for less than $500. So it's already a dramatic drop in terms of price. And it's our goal to even bring down this price even lower so more people have access to it. As Joe mentioned, that providing action, allow people to know their numbers, is the first step for people to reduce their exposures. If you don't know, there's not much action you can take.
And that's also the reason we're trying to fund our own lab, right, Jenna? So we can bring down the price even more.
Yes. Currently, we use third-party lab. There's efficiency in the current lab setup when using third-party lab, mainly because when you think about the specialties required to run these tests, first, you need an analytical chemist who knows about environmental chemicals. Second, you need an analytical chemist that knows about environmental chemicals and knows how to run these chemicals in urine. And then the third, the machine also requires the special skill to operate. And many labs actually they run many different studies. Oftentimes, the machine will get clogged or using different methods. So it's very hard to control how much time you need to spend on the machine. If the test doesn't pass the quality control, the lab will have to rerun. These all kind of add up to the cost that potentially per test will cost. So the reason we wanted to set up our own lab is so we can reduce these costs. We will run our specific samples, our specific panel, so we can be more efficient.
Yeah, there's no lab right now that's just dedicated to what we want to do. And so that's why we need to make our own situation.
Could you speak a little bit more as to how you and Joe met each other and what made you guys want to work together?
Yes, so Joe and I met all because of Tedx. I think in the last episode, we talked about Tedx, Endocrine Disruption Exchange, a pioneer in the field and provided lots of knowledge to
Not
people, to the
associated.
scientists.
Yeah, not associated with TED Talks.
Yes, not associated with TED Talks. It's an even more special organization.
Yes.
When I first heard about TEDx many years ago, but back in 2019, I heard TEDx is shutting down, and I immediately kind of clicked that, goodness, all these scientists and everybody working at TEDx, these are wonderful resources. How could this go to waste? I contacted one of our potential investor, and he was on the TEDx board. So he introduced me to TEDx, to Carol, who's leading TEDx, and then Carol introduced me to Joe, Katie, Chris, everyone who so far we have been very much involved with. That's how we met.
Yeah, and I was really excited the first few conversations I had with Jenna about how much on the same page she was with our mission at TEDx, just trying to get information out there, trying to help people, trying to work with things on the consumer side. And it was just really exciting that we could continue kind of our mission, because there really isn't any other group like TEDx. This topic is so complicated. We need chemists, we need health scientists, we need toxicologists, we need policymakers, and everyone kind of needs a seat at the table to talk about the science is complicated and the social impact is complicated. And so TEDx was really needed to kind of put all that together, and it was called the Endocrine disruption exchange because everyone did have a seat at the table to discuss, how to move forward. And I think Million Marker's in a great position to continue that work.
Yeah, and I feel like Million Marker's spot in this arena is really important. I worked at Tedx for 10 years, and we always talked about the fact that we were trying to make change on a policy level, but the consumer side was sort of being left behind. And, it was sort of a depressing topic to work on for a lot of years. And we always talked about how can you make this change and make it happen quickly. And when you're dealing with the political side of things don't move quickly at all. And, we worked with a lot of scientists and government people, and, I think we made a lot of changes, but they were slow. And Million Marker just offers that piece that makes that connection of what you can do on a personal level. That's really exciting to be a part of.
Yeah. The fastest change does come from consumers, because if they're not going to buy it, then companies won't sell it.
Absolutely.
Exactly, Joe.
It's almost a chicken and egg problem as well, that government needs data to make policy changes, but we don't actually have the data unless we crowdsource this effort and then going consumer, that being able to collect lots of data, studying these chemicals, showing their impact. That's how we can drive policy change.
Yeah.
And this, I think this is also very important, that the science translation piece is also extremely important, because as Joe mentioned, these chemicals are very complicated. How do we actually communicate to the public the uncertainty of the science and the risk of the chemicals? All these requires very fine balance. And that's something that we wanted to explore. And then we wanted to provide people easy, digestible information. They're able to actually utilize this information to make changes and optimize their health.
Mm-hmm. We work really hard on our blog posts and all our educational materials that we provide on the website, so people can make choices. Sorry, Dina?
Oh, no, I'm just making it accessible to like everyday readers, not necessarily people with a degree or background or professional experience in these chemicals.
Yeah. We always say, like, how would you explain it to your grandma, which, some people's grandmas are PhDs, but not everyone. Or how you would explain it to your friend who's not a scientist or something like that.